welcome to our time. Here's a situation. We're with a loved one and they pass away. What do we do? How do we emotionally cope? And what happens to the body of a person we love or we've been looking after? Or, for example, in a nursing home or even in a hospital. Well, it's my cousin Trevor's job to take care of those things and much more. And Trevor's here. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good.
And I'm glad to tell you I'm fine because you can't take me away.
Oh,
just
well, I don't
yet.
have a tape measure in my pocket today,
okay.
so you're safe.
Now, we are going to talk about the serious side of this, but just before we do that, we grew up together in the Adelaide Hills.
We did.
Living almost next door to each other. And just to come absolutely clean with everything, I was a boy soprano and you were a soprano but alto in those years.
Yes.
And my mum taught us both to sing.
That's right.
In harmony.
Yes.
And we made a record.
We did in Holy Trinity.
We did, with an enormous recording device that was probably the size of my little smart car, I think.
And Ray Kidney played the pipe organ.
Yes, that's right. It was quite an adventure for two young guys who really, you know, coming from the Adelaide Hills, we didn't really know much about the outside world.
It was a big thing.
It was a big thing. And we've got a photo to prove it.
No.
Look at this.
Ouch.
This is us singing in what's now Her Majesty's Theatre, when it was still called the Tivoli Theatre. And not only do I have it in black and white, but I also have it in colour.
In colour.
Look at that.
And our ties were Guy Mitchell blue.
They were.
Similar to here.
And we had a jumper.
Yes.
Didn't we? Like a sleeveless jumper. But the colorising thing didn't do anything to that, unfortunately. Do you know, I remember that as if it was yesterday. And my father gave me a special haircut for the night. You were lucky. I don't think your dad cut your hair.
No, Dad didn't cut my hair.
That was very much one of the things of living in the hills, wasn't it? That
Absolutely.
all the families helped each other out with everything.
Definitely, yes.
So, but where you live now, you've got half your family living with you there as well.
Yes, I have. I'm lucky enough to live in Clarendon on a big acreage with animals, horse, donkeys, alpacas, sheep, and plenty of room for grandchildren to ride skid bikes and learn to drive cars
and pick
jump
blackberries.
over snakes instead of treading on them and that sort of thing. Yes.
A lot to learn with a couple of your children living
on
literally
the same
next
property?
door. Yes, which is great.
But we're all separated, so we can't even see each other's houses unless we walk through the property.
No, that's really good, isn't it?
It's great.
But your background from us singing together as little boy sopranos, mostly with church things, we won a lot of Eisteddfods and things in those days.
Yes.
And the other funny part of the story is you married our competitors.
I did, yes. Yes, that was through a group called Scripture Union. Christian Endeavour.
Yeah, Christian Endeavour.
And yes, the woman I married and her friend were runners up to us for 2 or 3 years running.
Yes. Did you know her then?
No.
Isn't that amazing?
No, didn't have a clue.
Life takes you in these interesting places.
Sure
but
does.
You've been in many interesting places because you didn't start working for funeral homes.
No, I left high school and went to Teachers College and became an art teacher and had a great time in that. It was good fun, loved every minute. Ended up as a supervisor roaming around the top of the state to the Aboriginal communities and the small schools like Cook out on the plains.
Oh, even I didn't know that.
And there you go. And then we moved into a big centre in Whyalla, a YMCA hostel that the Baptist Church bought, and we made it a 7-day-a-week community centre with craft programs, kids programs, helping the homeless, kids who didn't have jobs, people who needed help because they'd got themselves into trouble, and having a good time.
Do you think doing that led you to what you're now doing?
No, I don't think so. Because,
really in the assistance for people who are in need.
Oh, that side, I guess so. Although when we left there, I was going back teaching, but resigned a fortnight before school opened and had a job with another funeral company and realised I really felt at home, at peace and enjoyed the opportunity to help people.
Yeah, so that's what I mean about what you've done in Whyalla, sort of flowing through in a different way.
I think all of my careers have been helping people, because from there I went to the Baptist Union office and helped with underprivileged kids through Baptist Care, with fostering men's sheds and craft groups in churches, again working with people. Before that ended, and I finished where I am now with Charles Berry and Son.
So just explain what your position is there. What do you
I'm a funeral
really look
consultant, which means I meet with families, arrange and conduct the funerals and do follow-up with them. But I also have a role in overseeing staff, training staff, and doing general PR work for the company.
Right. All right, so here's the tough questions, or the questions that every Monday morning I meet a group of old dancers who used to be part of the Channel 9 ballet
Right,
here.
yes.
And this morning I said to them, okay, what do you know about what happens to your body? Not physically and internally as such, but what actually happens, who does what do you need to do? And it was really interesting because all the girls had different questions because of different circumstances of life. One of them, of course, was, so my partner or child or parent passes away at home. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. What do I do?
Simply you call the ambulance. The ambulance will come and ascertain if death has occurred, and if so, and it's an unexpected death, we'll call the police, who will come and do their investigation. They will phone the now deceased's personal doctor and find out if that doctor says, yes, that patient had a known illness and therefore
like
I can
a heart
write
disease or something, for
something
example.
like that,
Yep.
or was suffering from some sort of terminal illness, and I can write the death certificate. In that case,
So it's 2 o'clock in the morning when we realise this happens.
you ring your doctor, and because the police have to ascertain whether the funeral director can come and transport them back to their place,
Right.
or whether the coroner needs to be called.
Right. One of the questions was, so this happened to my mother and the police rang to tell me that. I went to her home and the police said, now what would you like to do now? And she said, I have no idea.
Correct.
And all those things you just said actually happened. But she also made the point, strangely enough, that because she'd heard an advertisement on radio or something, she rang the first name that was in her head to do that. Now that's because nobody had any sort of plan for the future and had actually not talked about what could happen at a time like this.
And that's a big thing in our current society. We talk about planning and growing up, and I've got 14-year-old grandkids looking for in 2 years I can get my licence. And particularly, I guess, more so for the younger girls and women, planning on getting married, having a family, or we're planning for
Men
our
get
careers.
married too.
Oh yeah, that's true. Planning for that,
Small thing.
or what job or career or studies I will do. But we do not talk about what happens in death. What are my plans in death? What do I want, a cremation or a burial? Do I want a service or not have a service? Am I making plans through the aged care situation? Have I written a will? Anything like that we tend to put on the back burner because it's not a nice thing to think about.
Yes, well, funnily enough, we've had different advisors that I've talked to on the program. Some have said, you know, it's somebody's birthday, you need to talk about these things, or when the family's all together at Christmas, just take that 5 minutes to say, you know, this is what I'd like, what's the deal with you, sort of thing. Do funeral homes help with those sorts of things sort of in reverse? Now, that's an odd question. But I mean, with somebody who really doesn't know what to do because it's never happened to them before, do you advise them through the other areas? It's not just taking the body away, it's also who do I notify apart from the doctor?
Absolutely. Our role is to do a whole holistic help for people that they are guided as to what they have to do from here.
And this is primarily what you do?
Yes.
And just give us an example of some of the things that you
Okay,
would
so
look
we
after.
meet with the families. Once they've decided to come with our company, we meet with them and help them make the choices they need to make to have a funeral. Example, do they want to have a direct disposition, which means just the family members will gather, say their goodbyes, and then we attend to the burial or the cremation. And then they may or may not have a public event, which is like a memorial gathering at a later date.
We used to call that a funeral service. Is that still a
funeral
name?
service is when you advertise either publicly or privately and have a gathering with either a celebrant or a minister or someone who can MC.
So that would be like
service.
in a funeral home.
Or in their church.
Or in a church.
Or in their front yard, or their living room.
Well, in the theatre. I've had a couple.
Place,
I've had a couple in my theatre.
That's right. And so we then guide them with what they need to follow up from there. Who do they contact to see that the will is sorted out? What places do you need to notify so that things that need to stop? Like if a person is on a Centrelink pension, Centrelink need to be told so that they can cut it off at the required time. But other things have to wait until a death certificate comes. So we guide people.
And that can take quite some time.
Yes, it can.
Speaking of time, we have to take a short break for just a moment. There's lots more questions I have to ask. Welcome back to Our Time. My guest is my cousin, Trevor Harslett. Trevor, we're just talking about what happens physically when you die, not to your body, but, well, to your body being taken away and what happens next. Some people choose to have a viewing. Just explain what happens there.
It's recommended that there be a viewing for everyone who's died by someone who knows the person really well, to sign a form to say that that is that person.
That's who it is. So could that happen literally when somebody passes, or does that need to be after the event?
It's recommended that that happens once the person is prepared and in their coffin.
Right.
So the last person who sees them clearly identifies that
that's the right person in the box,
that's
you might
correct,
say.
yes.
Right, because of all those years of digging up and finding scratch marks and stuff like that. I think it's a little different now to the old days when that happened.
Definitely, yes.
But preparing a body to be seen or looked at by family or friends, what happens?
Where I work, we work under strict OC health and safety rules, and that is also on strict moral grounds that a person needs to be cared for decently and respected properly once they've died. So preparing them, looking after them, washing and cleaning them, and tending to anything that needs to be repaired, dressing them according to the family's wishes is a very integral part.
I like tending to anything that needs to be repaired, because there are things, like the jaw needs to be put in place.
We need to close the mouth, we need to close the eyes. Some people have had falls where there's damage, and so to tone down the effects of like a bruise on a face, so that it's not such an in the eye look, but
well, you want to remember someone you loved in the way that you love them.
That's right. And the benefit of a viewing, whether it be for one person or a whole family, is to give them the opportunity to say their goodbyes and emotionally to recognise that, yes, death has occurred.
It's funny, we were brought up, I guess, in the little old churches up in the Adelaide Hills, that we went to everybody's funeral. So going to funerals is not a big deal in a way. It's, I suppose, we accept it as part of life. Have you always felt that way?
To a degree, although with my family, we were left in the car outside the cemetery.
Oh, were you?
Because that was for the adults.
Oh, okay. I think I was a pallbearer for most of the family, and I felt that as quite an honour, to be quite honest, to be able to do that.
Yes.
And I still go and visit everybody up in the cemetery.
Absolutely. And a lot of people feel it an honour to assist in the funeral, like being a pallbearer, or to get up and do a eulogy, or something that gives them that opportunity to respect and to give their thoughts.
Now, that's an interesting thing too, talking about people giving eulogies, because collecting information about loved ones can be much harder than you realise, and finding the photos, finding what they've actually done in life, particularly if you're the child of, because you don't know what happened before you.
That's right. And part of the eulogy can be interesting. Some people go into absolute minute detail, which becomes boring to those there.
Yes.
You need to give enough that makes it interesting. And if you're having more than one person, you need to coordinate so that it just doesn't repeat and repeat. And the same with a photo presentation. Some people put everything in it, and you're sitting there thinking, oh my goodness, another photo of them on their cruise. You need enough to make a photo presentation show an interesting life.
They're probably the photos you don't need to see. It's the special things. I expect my book to be read, which is about 600 pages long, so I think people need to take a packed lunch.
Well, you might have double or triple fees if it's going to take that
long. Bit of editing,
so perhaps there should be a slight pre-sale.
We need to laugh about these things because we can't change the fact this is life.
No, life is life, and death happens. I heard someone once get up and say, when they approached the coffin and they were a celebrant, really good, their comment was, flowers die and so do we. And the concept of what they were saying, though it was a bit hard-hearted in that sense, was true. A flower germinates, it comes through the ground, it grows, it blossoms, it withers, it dies. And really that's what happens to us. That's the life cycle.
Yes, well, planets do the same. I mean, it's everything.
Yes, animals, the whole thing.
Yes, absolutely everything. One of the questions from this morning was, what about embalming? Is that still something that's occurred?
Absolutely, on a necessary basis.
Yes, and what happens?
With embalming, it's the removal of sufficient fluids and the replacing with preservative fluids for particular needs. For example, if a person is being sent back overseas to their homeland, it's a legal requirement that they are embalmed so that preservation happens and the funeral can happen in their country of home.
Right. Now, I never considered that. That's interesting to say.
Or if we have to keep someone for a long time. There might be family overseas or particular reasons why we can't have the funeral for several weeks. To ensure we can have a viewing for the family's sake in several weeks' time, certain amounts of embalming need to be done so that there is no deterioration of the deceased.
Right. Well, obviously, bodies are put in the fridge, so to speak.
Yes, in the temperature-controlled room.
Oh, okay. Called a fridge to me. Again, we have to see the humour in these things.
Absolutely.
How do you feel about dying?
I'm comfortable with the fact that there is a life cycle. While I'm not hanging out to die,
no,
I'm comfortable that there is a life cycle. And with yours and my age, we also have to remember that we are reaching that grouping.
Well, that's
where
true.
It's, in the scheme of things, happens. However, that's not like death. Death happens at all times and in all sorts of circumstances. What
do you feel is the best advice you can give a grieving family member?
To be real to your emotions, because we're all made with emotions. And contrary to the way a lot of our stiff upper lip upbringing from our British days is that men don't cry or show emotions, that is so wrong, because that's us. And it's the showing of our emotions and being free to express our emotions that helps us move on. Not forgetting or overcoming, but with the memories and the love around us still within us. So being free to show emotions, to be angry, to be hurt, to be upset, but to know that we can move on in our lives gradually with those thoughts.
Yeah, I think that's why having, well, I'd say a proper funeral, I don't know if such a thing exists, but it does put a closure, doesn't it?
A proper funeral is what is right for the individual and the circumstances. Now, whether that be the whole grand scale of big church, lots of music, lots of people, or the 5 or 6 family that are important sitting around the coffin in a lovely room, be it home or our chapel or a church or out in a garden. The proper funeral is what is right for the individual and the family.
And the family, yes. To grieve in happier surroundings, I suppose.
Yeah.
And that's why, again, this thing of we all need to leave some of our history for these occasions, but also to pass on to other family members. Like you said, you've got family living sort of all around you and grandchildren living all around you, but they probably have no knowledge of what you really did in Whyalla or any of the other places.
Well, I guess in my circumstances, we are blessed in that our children remember Whyalla and know Whyalla.
They do, but not your grandchildren.
The grandchildren, but our whole interwoven lives brings things to be. So
you talk
they
about
love to find photos of when I had my afro or very
I'd
long
forgotten
hair
that, yes.
or my full beard or some of the clothes, the interesting clothes we wore in the 70s, the platform shoes,
Yes.
that sort of thing. So we're surrounded by
Because I wasn't born in the
kids that love us.
70s, so I never had any of those.
You didn't have those? Oh, much. I've seen the photos.
That's true.
But yes, it's keeping life alive, that there is life. And I guess we feel very blessed because a lot of our grandchildren are growing up knowing that their pets die and we need to bury them and say goodbye to them. But then we get a new pet. And the concept that we, their grandparents, too, will die and they'll have to say goodbye to us. So all knowing about each other and sharing things and having them coming to our house and cook or having them help me do jobs that the children don't want to see because I might be up a ladder and be involved with them where we can tell stories. It's
Well, it's
about
passing
telling
on your
stories.
heritage, isn't it?
Passing on our heritage.
And part of going to funerals and things, to me, is passing on your
Part of that.
heritage.
Leaving things written for them, things that they know where they are. So the children knowing where there's photographs, where there's some articles written, that sort of thing, so that the stories of the previous generation keep going on.
There is genuinely so much to talk about these things, and sort of knowing that obviously with the funeral homes that exist, there's assistance wherever you go, that people will look after you. But it must be quite daunting if you haven't been brought up as we were, with these things happening around us and just accepting this as part of life. And when a genuine adult goes to a funeral for the first time, it's a huge shock.
It is.
Because you really have no understanding how to react. That's why I say I think we were lucky. Well, I was. You had to sit in the car, but we had to go to everybody's
For a certain
funeral.
period of time.
Yes,
When
yes,
we got
yes,
older,
yes.
we were okay.
Oh, that's okay, when you were 36. Look, we've got to take another short break and we'll be back with a couple more questions. And welcome back to Our Time. We've been talking about what actually happens to our bodies, not physically internally, but externally when we die. And we were actually just talking before about, well, a couple of things like what happens if a body needs to go to a coroner, for example.
If they need to go to the coroner, it's because the actual doctor, that person's regular GP, doesn't have enough information on their health records
Right.
to be able to say this is the reason the person's died. In which case they go to the coroner gathers reports from the doctor, if they've come from a nursing home, from them, the
Right.
family, and information from the funeral director, and then they ascertain whether it has a pathological review or needs an autopsy, or whether they are satisfied with the records and can hand back to the doctor to write a certificate.
Right. So, and that would also happen if it was a sudden death at home
Absolutely.
or wherever.
A sudden death, a person who's died very soon after surgery, just getting to hospital, or not known why death occurred.
Oh, a really quick question, apart from how much does it cost, a really quick question is if somebody has been an organ donor, and also things like rings on your fingers or personal jewellery.
Personal jewellery is returned to the family upon their request and only left on the deceased if they want the jewellery to go with them.
Okay, because that was one of the things that they brought up this morning. Somebody came in, quickly took off everyone's jewellery, and they were thinking, it's a bit sudden, but then realised, well, they're going off, they're not exactly going to need to wear that.
They're not going to need the jewellery, and jewellery can become an emotional desire, particularly like the gold in a grandmother's wedding ring, for a granddaughter to use in her own wedding ring.
Understood.
That sort of emotional
Yeah, absolutely
contact with
understood.
it.
Now, how much does it cost?
How much does it cost? It really depends on what is appropriate for the person who's died and their family as to what they choose and select.
So
and
that could be
what they
anything
have.
from a cardboard box to a very ornate
Well, a
casket
basic
sort of thing.
coffin, because you've got to be careful with environmental safety with how coffins are made. But yes, from a basic coffin to anything quite elaborate.
So the advice is ask the questions
Ask
as
the
you
questions.
go.
Ask if you can let your relative do the flowers or print the cards or that sort of thing. But be in contact and responsible for what monies you're spending so that you know it is right for the situation and you're not getting yourself in too deep.
Thank you for all that. Good luck with it all
Pleasure.
in the future.
Thank you.
Because you've passed retirement age too.
I have, yes.
But you're still working.
And I'm still working
and that's
and
what
loving
keeps
it.
us alive.
It is.
Look,
and it's good.
So thank you, Trevor. Until next time on Our Time, we hope this has helped you and perhaps answered a few questions that you may have been thinking about in the past or for the future. And so until next time on Our Time, keep yourself nice till then. Bye.
Thank you.